Our first talk is on ptosis, revisited, controversies and advances. I think there is no point playing the videos. So ptosis is excuse me. Ptosis, as you all know, is drooping of the upper eyelid, and the challenges begin first and foremost with our knowledge, which we should update before we proceed with the management of a patient of ptosis. So knowing about pseudoptosis is equally important. Like in this case, the eye which is appearing ptotic is not a true ptosis. It is a phthisis bulbi with cataract and iridocyclitis. Then we need to know about other causes of pseudoptosis like enophthalmic socket, phthitic eye, orbital floor fractures leading to enophthalmos can lead to a pseudoptosis. Lid retraction of the other eye, a very common feature with our residents. The first years they will come rushing, ma'am, he has ptosis in the other eye, without realizing that the other eye is having lid retraction, which is giving the appearance of ptosis. Then mechanical pseudoptosis can be there due to these dermoids, clasion and cellulitis. And treatment of pseudoptosis is basically the treatment of the cause, which we should look after. Now coming to the congenital ptosis, it is basically a muscular dystrophy with the amount of droopiness is in ratio with the amount of loss of striated muscle fibers, an autosomal dominant condition. Unilateral is more common than bilateral, but some studies say it is of the ratio of 3:1. Then it can be further classified as simple congenital ptosis with superior rectus weakness, with BPS, with Marcus-Gunn jaw winking, and the third nerve ptosis. And it is definitely a challenging management issue, and a thorough examination of a case of ptosis is a must. And why it is must? To decide the surgical procedure of choice and to avoid any post-operative surprise. And our challenges begin with as young the child is. Evaluation of a pre-verbal child in the presence of anxious parents is one of the biggest challenge, and we need to determine the etiology, mainly to determine it is a congenital or it is due to any other cause. So we know about the history factors, the age, diurnal variation, jaw movement, history of trauma, everything has to be taken care. Considering how the eyelid position affects the child's visual and psychosocial development is very important, because that will decide the time of our surgery. Its special consideration needs to be given to the risk of amblyopia. If the pupillary area is being covered and we are in doubt that amblyopia is going to set in, we should think of other ways or go for an early surgery if crutch glasses are not easy for the patient. And if it is a non-amblyogenic, we can carry on for some time till the LPS is well developed, and the child can get operated even at teenage, and provided he is not having any cosmetic issues too much. So like in this case, in how we proceed with the case of ptosis, we first start with the inspection of the lid crease, lid lag. Just ask the patient to look in down gaze, the pupillary aperture will increase in cases of congenital. Measurement of the vertical palpebral height, and then measurement of the lid fold, that is done in the primary gaze, and then the lid crease is done in down gaze. Very important, because that will be the site of our giving the incision. MRD1 and MRD2 in both the eyes. MRD1 is more important than VPH, that we know. If there is discrepancy between the two, we follow the MRD1. Burke's method followed for the LPS measurement of the LPS action, very important landmark for deciding our ptosis surgery. Bell's phenomena, very important to see, because otherwise if it is poor, we need to undercorrect. Marcus-Gunn, another important thing, and corneal sensation. So all these things have to be seen every time we analyze a case of ptosis. Remember this mnemonic and it will be helpful. Drooping of the lid, excursion, superior rectus, tear film evaluation. Ellipse test is generally done in infants when we evert the lid, and the quickness with which it reverts back, it tells about the strength of the LPS muscle. Then neurological examination and yawning for the Marcus-Gunn. This we tell our residents to be ready with a standard format. In every ptosis workup, we have to follow all these steps, should be followed. Now pre-operatively, as I said, operative conditions can be just see whether the eye is going into amblyopia, if it is responsible for a chin up position. Many patients of bilateral ptosis, the parent will come that the child keeps the chin up, which is very disturbing, and it should also be considered as one of the cause of going for early surgery. And how it affects the social interaction of the child. If the child is feeling complexed or he is not comfortable in his peer group, that is another one reason for going for an early surgery. In case there are we can have a waiting period due to any reason, then crutch glasses for amblyogenic eyes are very important. We should emphasize on them so that the eye doesn't go into amblyopia. And if the compliance with crutch glasses is not poor, patient has to be kept on good follow-up. And if the compliance is very poor or not followed, we should go for early surgery. Interaction with patient is very important because ideal results cannot be obtained in every patient. We should not raise the expectations of the patient too high because it is very troubling later on, both for the patient as well as the surgeon, and inform the patient that there can be a chance of re-surgery also. Again, the severity of ptosis, the levator action, and whether it is simple or a complicated are the features which we have to keep in mind. Always quantify and classify the ptosis in 2 different settings. Always measure the LPS also in 2 different settings. So you are confirmed about that. Which procedure you have to decide? Again, there are various things. How much effort the child exudes to utilize the involved eye. The frontalis action, you should be careful. In those who have a good frontalis action, slings will also give a good result. So this has to be also taken care of. Bell's phenomena, as I said, if Bell's phenomena is poor, chances of exposure keratitis are marked. So in such cases, slight undercorrection, and sometimes we avoid surgery if Bell's phenomena is absent, because it is better to leave the patient a little cosmetically disturbed rather than giving him a functional problem of corneal ulcers and due to exposure keratitis. That is even more painful. So you have to balance your decision. Strength of the eyelid crease again tells us about the LPS action. So choice of surgical procedure will determining an appropriate procedure should be individualized, and obtaining ideal surgical outcomes can be both challenging and controversial. This can vary from surgeon to surgeon. So good levator function, we would go for a Fasanella cervet or an LPS resection or LPS plication. It is a favored procedure for children in mild degree of ptosis who have minimal response with phenylephrine. The ratio of tarsectomy to eyelid elevation is 2 mm of tarsectomy with 1 mm of desired elevation when we want. So we just evert the lid, pass 3 sutures at the everted end of the lid. 3 more sutures are passed at the fornix coming out from the lid margin. These are very helpful. Bitheria et al. Had recommended this, and now this is being followed almost every time because it makes the surgery quite easy. So we measure 2 mm of the tarsoconjunctivomular area, and that it is marked, it is cut, followed by the suturing which is started. So after cutting it, we will start with the conjunctival suturing first, and completing the suturing, the suture is exteriorized, and we can get good results with this. These are the few patients of I've done with mild ptosis, which we corrected with Fasanella cervet surgery. Coming to good levator function, levator resection. Cutting in the salient features of this is that cutting of the LPS horns is very important. We should be careful about the Wittnall's ligament. Medially, we should take care of the superior oblique tendon, and laterally the lacrimal gland. Suture placement is important. We should avoid passing suture through the orbital septum and create a good eyelid crease by taking appropriate bites from the LPS. So after giving a lid crease incision and exposing the tarsal plate, we go behind and we have to see that orbital septum is cut. Amount of ptosis, the resection that has to be done is marked, and after this it is again reinserted at the tarsal plate. So after doing a number of surgeries, you become quite experienced and you can give good results. Not that difficult a surgery, I would say. Going to the next is the LPS levator plication. It is a simple, safe, effective and versatile procedure for correction again of mild moderate blepharoptosis. Advantages are it is less time consuming, no muscle is excised, earlier revision if needed can be done, and it is simple to learn for beginners. However, disadvantages are that it has a greater chance of drooping from the 4th week onwards, and it failed to correct dystrophic muscle in congenital ptosis. Though it is a good procedure, but still I think I prefer LPS resection, and I've seen majority preferring that. Although I have done a number of cases, but if given a choice, I prefer a LPS resection. Maybe my results are better with that. Now, most important, this controversy which always comes is for the poor levator function, whether we should go for a supramaximal levator resection or a transfrontalis sling. Now, there are various options available if it is a unilateral ptosis with poor levator function. The unilateral sling, bilateral sling can be done, which used to be done previously. Nowadays, I don't think anybody does bilateral sling. Patients are not willing also for the touching the normal eye. Supramaximal levator resection is a very good option. So, I personally prefer if the ptosis LPS action is between 4 to 5. Even 4.5 I have tried, and even with 4, supramaximal levator resection resection gives good result. It definitely is a little tedious process, takes more time. You have to put in a few extra steps of putting a phonic suture. Also, the resection of a strip of skin has to be done. And all these procedures, if you take care of, it gives good result. Especially in young children, giving a good lid crease is very satisfying for the patient than going for sling, where we know that we cannot give a good lid crease and a large amount of lid lag may be present. So supramaximal, and then always there is an option. We can always tell the patient that if the supramaximal is not gives good results, sling can be done later on also after 3 to 6 months. But giving a trial, but 4.55 I have always tried, and it has been satisfactory for me. These are few cases of severe ptosis in which I have tried supramaximal levator resection. Initially I did have few complication of conjunctival prolapse, but now with experience and learning the extra things that need to be done, I'm quite comfortable with it, and I prefer it as my procedure of choice. Sling surgery, we have to decide between Fox Pentagon and the Crawford. This I'm telling you the challenges and the controversies which we face. Otherwise, sling surgery everybody knows. The Fox triangle is the lower one which you see. We give 2 triangles, and the upper one is Pentagon. Over the years, Pentagon used to be the preferred choice, but of lately Fox Crawford this Crawford double triangle is also being accepted because it gives a good contour to the lid. There's a balanced contour of the lid both sides, which Fox Pentagon sometimes is not able to give. So it depends on surgeon to surgeon again what you prefer. I personally prefer the Crawford double triangle now. Over the years I have found it, because with Fox sometimes there is clumping of the tissue over the forehead. Then again one incision is with Fox Crawford, you can just end up over here and lie over there. With Fox Pentagon you have another scar over here. So that is one advantage also. However, this autogenous tensor tendon fascial lata is still the gold standard wherever it can be preferred, but still I think maximum of us, because of the tedious procedure that it has to follow, and in pediatric age group because the taking out this tendon is also not easy. So this Orosling, which is the preferred material, silicone, is the one which is being preferred. So transfrontalis sling, if it is being done in a adult and it is done under LA, on the table itself you can monitor your result. You can, after passing the sling, I have tried making the patient sit and comparing with the other eye and then tying down. It has given satisfactory result. So you can try this also. So I think we are not left with these Marcus Gunn jaw winking. To eliminate the jaw winking, levator excision has to be done, and to correct the ptosis, the fascial lata sling is the preferred, but in this also we are doing the silicone sling. Where various options were previously also available, but preferred now is unilateral levator excision with unilateral sling, which most of us are, which I think are doing. So it gives good result once you do a levator excision with unilateral. BPS, if we know it has these all things: epicanthus inversus, telecanthus, ptosis, decreased horizontal palpebral aperture, ectropion, flattened supraorbital lid. Now I won't say it's a controversy, but debate that whether it should be done in 2 steps or it should be done in 1 step. Many people prefer to doing both the things: the horizontal increase, the CU plasty, or and the lateral cantholysis followed by the sling surgery, and they prefer to do it in the same sitting. However, personally I do it in 2 sittings. First doing this medial plasty and the lateral in 1 sitting, followed 3 months later by the sling surgery, and I have been able to get good results. This was a patient of blepharophimosis which we operated in 2 stages, and we got reasonably good results. I have other patients also. Anyway, so this I'll skip. Complications, under correction, very common. So generally corrected within a week or 2 immediately after surgery. You have to take care with an augmented LPS resection. It can require repeat surgery. Overcorrection, again with traction it generally comes down, or with massage. So immediate post-op period has to be rigorous follow-up. You should follow up the patient, especially if you think there is some over or under, on regular intervals. Even if you want, you can keep the patient admitted and see that you can give a good result. Then contour abnormalities, lag of thalamus, very common in the initial period. That is normal. It generally with time it covers up. Conjunctival prolapse, as I told, in supramaximal resection it is common, but after passing phonic sutures, the incidence of that also decreases. Exposure keratitis, if you have not been careful in the post-op period or the Bell's phenomena is poor, in sling surgery, granuloma formation can be there at the scar sites, so you have to be careful. So my take-home message is that careful pre-operative evaluation is the first and foremost thing. Planning and counseling comes second. Usually results in satisfactory surgical results with happy parents and happy patients can be there. Families should be aware that child needs long-term follow-up for visual development, ocular health and possibility of revision surgery. So congenital ptosis surgery, in spite of all its challenges, is extremely gratifying. This was a teenage girl who I corrected, and she got married, and from her honeymoon she sent me this pic that, ma'am, I've corrected the ptosis. So thank you.